Hey, welcome to the Fine Print, ladies and gentlemen. I am your totally exhausted host, Caleb Teskey, coming at you with another great interview today. And as usual, before we get into it, I would like to thank a couple of my previous guests, Antoine Mordekin from Native Black Cultivation in Alabama. A great interview with Antoine there. Dr. Anna Schwabe from New Jersey. That was another killer one. We're getting a lot of states on the map here, guys. And Nate Liberty and Keith Griswold from Green Mountain Scientific, along with John Rogers from Farmers Underground. John, just great guys up there. I do want to just announce a couple of things we got coming up. On Thursday, I've got Josh Swider from Infinite Chemical Analysis Labs in California, which I'm told is the largest testing lab in the country. On the 29th, I've got Diana Stewart from River Ridge Farms here. And then on Halloween, we got a special interview with one of my favorite journalists in the country, Brad Racino from New York. And I think that's just going to be fantastic. And also, shameless plug for my man Damien at Legacy. I'll be blazing on some Violet Fog here for this show. That shit is delicious, Damien. And without further ado, tonight we're going to touch, or today, it's usually tonight when I do interviews, but it's the afternoon. But this is a topic I really didn't know anything about until I went out to MJ BizCon in Vegas last year. I literally did not know that this kind of technology existed, and I was super curious to dig into it. And today we've got the manager of science from Willow Industries. It's Carly Bader. Hey, Carly, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much. This is great. Happy to be here.
Cool. Shameless slap, Willow Industries. Cool. Before we get into anything serious, would you mind giving us a 5-minute life story?
Oh, gosh. I feel like, I've been around the block for a minute and at least 5. I know the cannabis industry is pretty new, but there's some of us that have been here from the legal jump and maybe a little bit before. My expertise is in microbiology. I come with graduate education in molecular microbiology and a specialty in infectious disease. This was definitely my passion. I have a very investigative mind, so I love to, find the things that you literally can't see. And doing that through microbial techniques is definitely my forte. Went to school in Florida, University of Central Florida, got my master's there, and came to Colorado shortly after with a real passion for science and passion for research. There's a ton of research universities here in Colorado, lots of federal funding, and somehow found myself in a space of cannabis, something that is federally illegal. But really just felt like my expertise could be used in this space. Know a lot about plant growth and humidity and what microbes can grow, just due to being in Florida for many years. And now really kind of see each of these cultivators creating their own little Florida inside their greenhouses or indoor cultivations, and really just love helping different cultivators find the source of contamination and provide solutions around it. When I found myself at a testing lab, I really felt like I was giving the data to these teams of cultivators around their microbial load, but also felt very discouraged that a lot of times I was failing their product and locking it up in metric. I know cultivators are struggling. The cannabis industry is, really been hit hard recently with COVID and, different regulations even coming online that have made cultivating a really hard process to do perfectly the way the regulators are anticipating it being done. So this is something that I was just really passionate about. And after a few years within 2 different labs within the state of Colorado, just really wanted to be able to provide more solutions to these cannabis cultivators, really help work within the community versus being this kind of like outside lab regulatory body. Although they're not the state regulators, they kind of get treated as such. I love that you're having Infinite Chemical. You have had such incredible teams of scientists over the past few weeks and moving forward. And I think this is why even I'm here today on the podcast, is because I think these organic conversations need to happen more often, and that we all really are a community of individuals who believe in the product. I'm a cannabis smoker, and I can say that way back in the day, we were using Home Depot Petri dishes that are used for mold testing.
No shit.
In friends, little greenhouses and in their small cultivations. I feel like I've been hijacking the system for a long time to make sure that what my friends and I are smoking is something that's as clean as possible and still has that great quality.
Okay, and cool. And I want to sort of back it up a little, because I wanted to ask you about your work with infectious diseases, because that was something that was super interesting to me. I was wondering if you'd tell us about that, please.
Yeah, so my graduate studies was on cholera, Vibrio cholera, which creates a toxin. This toxin is the number one killer of infants and children in third world countries around the world. Something that we very luckily have clean water. I can drink my tea here today and not worry that the water source was contaminated by feces. And this is just something that we in a first world country have just such right to. And I think even in other countries, everyone has the right to clean water. So this was really, when I was in graduate school, I felt like the biggest impact that I could really do with my research was studying a disease that has the most impact on the world. So that was kind of really where my passion lied there. And still today, studying mycotoxins and the toxins that are, relevant to cannabis, something that is really up and coming, but not as federally funded. So, always kind of being a clandestine scientist, my interest really moved from that kind of passion towards what I saw within my Colorado community, people smoking every day, immunocompromised individuals using it as medicine, people using it recreationally, and just really seeing that these daily smokers, as we are really not as educated or protected as our other food or medical products.
Word up, yeah. And yeah, I assume part of that is because it's federally illegal and they won't come in with certain SOPs or, like they have for food products. And I also wanted to ask you about, I have a note here that says after graduation, you got into teaching and you had a paper published in Colorado, something about mesenchymal stem cells or something.
Yeah. So when I first came out to Colorado, I started studying obesity, another, disease that affects lots of, again, first world countries. Kind of sometimes a blessing that we have these things, that other countries have starvation. But the idea that we can look at stem cells as a early detector of someone who, the saying big boned, is actually a real thing. Stem cells that become bone can have a fattier content. And so I was doing stem cell research for quite some time when I first came out here. Again, the federal dollars, right? I could study the coolest thing, the most niche, little particular single pathway within the body. And really was having so much fun doing that when I first came out here. Again, though, just saw the impact and really wanted to support my local community. And what I saw, this was 7 years ago now, when cannabis really was first rolling out, when we first had total yeast and mold testing. This was well before some of our newer tests that came online, water testing and other states that have taken on aspergillus, but really wanted to, take that, again, my will to solve problems, man, oh man, whatever problem I see in front of me is the one I'm going to attack next.
And here's what I'm going to do. Let's see if I can change that. And I'm going to put you over there. There we go. That's better. Cool. And then after that, I wanted to ask you about. So you talked about this lab in Colorado, AgriScience,
Mhm.
and I believe you said it's the oldest lab in the state.
Yeah, oldest license holder still. Shout out AgriScience. We all still are very close. And yeah, I worked there for about 5 years, really built that lab with a great team of scientists. A lot of us that have gone on, as we do in the industry, to different avenues, and still support each other often. That led me, again, as you mentioned, into teaching. I wrote the cannabis curriculum for the Community College of Denver. Again, I feel like more education around this product. I see so much today where, regulators, scientists, we're trying to catch up. But again, I felt like I could maybe have a greater impact by teaching the next generation of students coming through, so that when they become regulators, when they become policymakers, they have that basis of science to really make those decisions, with consumers and cannabis in mind.
And did you guys do anything other than cannabis at AgriScience? Were you doing food products or anything like that? I know a lot of these other labs are testing other shit besides cannabis.
Yeah, so we were pretty small, and at that time we had 100+ samples coming a day. This was pretty early on, before process validation or reduced testing allowance or any of these kind of lowering testing volume regulations came about. So we were busy. We had morning staff, evening staff, really just kept to cannabis. And then when hemp did come online, that is when I had made a transition to working with Agricor and Botanicor, Botanicor being specifically the hemp side of Agricor's testing lab, which still to this day are in two different facilities. The scientists have to drive back and forth to them because of silly regulations. So learned a lot about hemp testing when I worked with Agricor, Botanicor.
Yeah, that seems inconvenient.
Terribly inconvenient. And now they've been more recently purchased by SC Labs. And again, still have really great contacts there. We do a lot of great R&D testing here at Willow using hemp, and ask SC to do our potency and our analysis of some microbials that I can't do in-house here. But it's really great to just, again, have this community of individuals over the last 7 years that are really my toolkit. And everyone's so open, and like I am, to come on a podcast, to go to conferences. I mean, we were joking recently, if you could hear the conversations that happen at dinner after the conferences, people could learn quite a lot. It's really a great group of individuals who are supporting the industry in the difficulties that it has today.
Well, the conversations at dinner at my house are a shit show. And okay, so could you tell us sort of how you transitioned from AgriScience to moving along to Willow?
Yeah, so I had taken the position, after AgriScience to SC, just due to some family situations that were going on. I needed just a little bit more time for myself, and running a lab is extremely time consuming. As I said, hundreds of samples a day, managing, supervising teams, QA, QC. It was really a lot of work. And, shout out to everyone who is really putting in the work at these testing labs and, really struggling through it, because the cannabis community is definitely suffering right now when it comes to, what testing requirements are there and how much they cost. The testing lab is often just trying to keep up with the regulatory bodies. So I really was interested in the cannabis cultivation, as well, and kind of got into solving the problem. I went to more and more of my failing clients' cultivations and was swabbing and starting to do kind of more environmental investigations, solving those problems, helping those cultivators, reducing their failed testing numbers, and reducing their costs on retests. And so I kind of found myself in an area where I wanted to start solving those issues, and had to take a step back when I went to SC just due to this family situation. And then after that year that I really needed, and SC supported me so greatly, I was reignited. I had some time, I had the energy back, and I was ready to take all those things that I had learned over the past 5-6 years and apply it to resolving these issues. And, that's in my own state of Colorado. I was just in a conference in New Jersey. I often sit on different regulatory meetings and really try to, support the community with science.
Are you from Colorado originally?
No, I was born in New York, ironically. Definitely a snowbird. My family moved to Florida for some sun, and was pretty much raised in Florida. I feel like that's where maybe a little bit of that clandestine energy comes from. And then, found after college that I just really wanted to do something different and find a community that supported the lifestyle that I live and the ability to, smoke marijuana in a state that I wasn't going to go to jail for.
I like your earrings too. I want to ask you, so this is going to sound dumb. So I'm going to now ask you a little bit about what you guys do at Willow. And this might sound like a dumb question, but for everybody out there, because like I said, I didn't know this technology existed until last year, until I went to Vegas. For everybody out there who might also have been in that same boat, could you tell us, like, what is remediation and what are the different remediation techniques that are being used for cannabis?
So yeah, when I was at these other labs, I definitely had a lot of clients who would say, well, now what do I do? You called me to tell me that I failed testing. It's going to get locked up in metric. Now what? What do I do? And back in the day, it was really extraction, turning that failed product that has yeast and mold into an extract with high heat, high pressure, and that'll kill everything for sure. And in microbiology, we have something called autoclaving. It's high heat, high pressure. Something you wouldn't want to do to a cannabis product that you would want to smoke again.
Why not? Why not? Why not? Why wouldn't you want to autoclave a cannabis product, Carly?
It would essentially go way too hot. You would, burn your THC content off, and it often includes steam. So you would really wet the product overall. So, steam sterilization, autoclaving, it's going to ruin the terpene content. It is going to ruin the cannabinoid content. It's probably going to turn really yellow, and it's going to suck all of the quality right out of your product. So, sterilization is a thing, but not something you want to do to the nice buds that you just grew. So really at that time, extraction was what we call remediation. And in Colorado specifically, that is remediation. It is the process, if I can remember correctly, the process of reducing microbial load while changing the product type. So going from a flower to an extract, that is remediation. Colorado has also defined decontamination as the process of removing microbial content after failed testing.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting distinction that I've never heard before.
Yeah, Colorado's getting real nitpicky. We also have on the most recent red lines, which are going to be decided on the 30th, a microbial control step. And this is what we at Willow really promote and are happy that they are making this distinction, because what about people who decontaminate before a failed test? I don't want to pay for a test, fail it, and then have to pay for duplicate retests and then pass those, which is great, but that's just a lot of money. So why wouldn't I put in a microbial control step? Because I know my cultivation has one spore of Aspergillus, and we can get into the fine print and talk about Aspergillus.
Well, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing right now, Carly.
When we are talking about reducing that, it is most likely that you are going to have as part of your standard operating procedure a step that reduces your microbials. Total yeast and mold, get it under 10,000. In your state, you might have BTGN under 1,000, right? Again, every state is different. So even for myself, I have to treat each one of our clients differently.
Mm.
So really the microbial control step is something that you would have all of your buds are going through this process. For us, it's a quick 1-hour willow ozonation that ensures that your product before testing is going to pass that testing. So you don't have to pay for test and retest. And just, we know testing is such
it's expensive as shit.
Yeah, it is a profit margin drain for every batch that you do. And I mean, I was just out in Vegas with a client. Vegas is 5-pound batches. So, I mean, you're talking just huge scale testing and huge scale cost. And I think
so you got to test every 5 pounds of a product in Vegas. Boy, wow. That's a.
And this is where, like I said, I came from the testing side. I felt, really confident there that I was giving people the science that they deserved, the data that they needed. And I feel like, it still wasn't enough. I wasn't giving them the solutions. And that's where I am now. At Willow, we have where you can introduce a microbial control step like willow ozonation into your process, ensure that you're going to pass, and really be confident that what comes out on the other side is still quality, is not autoclave steamed or irradiated, that really what you're getting on the other side is that pure product just as you intended it with less microbials.
So you said it's not irradiated, and I feel like that's the other maybe style. And Rad Source is a company I've been reading about. Can you tell us sort of how ozone remediation differs from Rad Source, or is that X-ray or something that they're doing?
Yeah, so they use actually gamma rays, and it is a great way to kill microbials. I'll be very honest. It's just the same way in which reactive oxygen is used in almost any of these systems. Hydrogen peroxide, UV, we're all making free radicals, right, in our own special way. And those free radicals are going to interact with the microbes and essentially act as little knives that are going to just stab through them, cause cellular damage, and kill those microbes. So we're all kind of getting there in a different fashion, but the chemistry behind it is really similar. I think what sets us apart from my point of view is really that runtime. As I said, we would like people to use the Willow as a proactive, treatment, something that they do before testing, and something that is very quick. You're growing clean, your product is quality, your cultivation is kept up to, close to GMP standards, where you have a really good understanding of your microbial load. You're tracking your inputs. I'm never against adding beneficials or living soil, as long as you know what the microbial load is, and we can adjust that treatment of the Willow machine. So truthfully, the idea is to have you put your product through for 1 to 2 hours. Those individuals who are maybe using living soil or a lot of beneficials or have a really tight state regulation, maybe they have to run it 3 or 4 hours. But I think our run time is really what sets us apart.
Why? Oh, sorry to cut you off. Can I ask you why maybe living soil would increase the run time on that?
Yeah, I mean, living soil or even outdoor grows, you're just going to have a really kind of enriched environment of microbials. Whereas if you were to be growing in something like Vitawool, you have no starting microbial content there. You're starting with 0. Whereas if you're using, living soil or adding, a tea to it, you're really amping up beneficial microbes, 100%. But do the regulators define what is beneficial and what is not? No, we just use a total yeast and mold test. This is something that's, been used in the food industry for a long time. And it doesn't speciate between what is a beneficial versus, what's beneficial to you plant versus what's beneficial to a person might also be different.
I've heard that, and I've heard it compared to sort of the fermentation process where you're making like kimchi or something.
Exactly. So in states where you have like a biotolerant gram-negative count and you're regulated there, using those beneficials is is gonna, possibly flag when it comes to that, because
No shit.
those are those bacteria that are fermenting, bile tolerant, so tolerant of the gut, right? So this is something that would be, part of fermentation. It's in the gut. It's an anaerobic environment. So this is definitely, if you want to use those, you might need to completely irradiate your product. And most run times for irradiation run around 12 hours. And, that is the exchange that you're making there, that you're going to have to run it for a lot longer to get that microbial count lower. And as I said, we're all using, reactive electrons. And so it really is how many of those electrons are needed to start piercing through those microbes, and how long you treat it is going to really have more and more side effects, as with just even any drug treatment.
And I got to do a shameless slap here. I waited a little too long. I'm with Carly Bader here from Willow Industries, manager of science. And one thing you said on the phone was that you believe that, because I asked you about the differences in these techniques, and you said you believe it's a much more gentle approach. And I'd like to hear maybe your rationale behind that.
Yeah, I think that comes towards really knowing your cultivation, really having a good quality product that then you can just treat for 1 hour. Ozone is a gas, it's just flowing over the material, penetrating through kind of those nooks and crevices as it's in the drum. But for me, when I say gentle, I think I mean just part of your standard operating procedure. It's not a reactive, oh no, all this product failed and now I need to figure out something, and I need to, I don't know what the microbial load is. So I guess I need to, irradiate it for 12 hours, just take it to the max. We really work with our clients to ensure that they have the lowest treatment time with the most efficacy. So the highest kill on their product with the lowest, time required. A lot of these cultivations that have failing product have it stored, and, it's not making it to the shelf the longer it's locked up in metric. So often in a reactive way, we need to make sure that we can get that product through the system and get it onto the shelves to consumers in a safe way. And that can happen over a single day, putting, 30 pounds into each drum load, 30 pounds times 8 hours. I mean, you're getting probably your full cultivation through that process versus what you would be able to do in a more aggressive 12-hour treatment.
And now, if I recall, you said that, so if somebody buys a piece of your gear, you guys will go out to their facility and give them a free consultation, check it out. Can you tell me how that works?
Yeah, so that's our newest arm of this company is Willow Scientific. And I think that is really what makes us different. And I think that's why we get to be so gentle with our clients and with their product, is because they take action. Our clients are not looking to continue growing failed product. They actually do want to grow cleaner and cleaner product, but sometimes need some cheap recommendations, some simple education on what, products to use. That 70% IPA, isopropyl alcohol, is actually more efficient than 100 at killing microbes. Sometimes
really? Why is it? Can you tell us why, or do you know the mechanism?
100%, yeah. And this is where, I feel like cannabis education is education at its finest. It really is so similar to my microbiology education. It's, cannabis is awesome, but it's not brand new. And 70% IPA. So not only am I killing more microbes, but I'm saving you money on your IPA. It is used specifically for sterilization because the 30% water is going to move that alcohol into the cell, and then that alcohol is going to be able to denature DNA and dry up that microbe. If you were to just put 100% alcohol on a microbe, it is going to dry out too fast. It might even cause that microbe to have a stress response. And okay, man, something really bad just happened, like really quick. That was weird. I'm going to make a ton of babies. So make spores, create more contaminant, really. The 70% IPA is used specifically within the food industry, agriculture industry, because of that alcohol that allows the passage, or because of that water that allows the passage of the alcohol into that cell membrane and kills the cell. So there's a money saving tip. And again, could you only imagine if a cultivation is, cleaning rigorously, really putting effort into cleaning with 100% IPA, and in all actuality, that is a waste of time, which is a waste of treasure. And really, we also, again, with Willow Scientific, when you are on a lease with the Willow machine, we come out and a lot of what we do is validate your cleaning techniques. Okay, you said you cleaned this bin. I'm going to swab it here and we'll see how clean it really is. Looking at bottles, making sure that expiration dates are not passed, which could also affect the efficacy of that cleaning reagent. So really looking into these finer details, the concept nose blind, people sometimes get cultivation blind. They're in it every day. They just don't see some of these things. They're so incredibly busy. I mean, again, shout out to all the cultivators and all the trimmers that are in there and really working hard to manage their cultivations the best that they can. Sometimes it does just take that quick outside consultation, having an exterior consultant come in, evaluate. We do a full write-up with the data. I'm super data driven. So I bring all the samples back here. I run them just as your state testing lab would. I know the assays that they use. And I can do that very simply and very cheaply here at our lab, because I'm not a third-party testing lab with ISO requirements. I mean, I could get ISO accredited, but again, that costs a ton of money. And so
but you don't have to be?
No, I can test anything other than cannabis. And so by just bringing...
So you guys can't test cannabis there?
No. So what I bring back is soil. I bring back water. You say your RO system is cleaning your water. Let's check. Let's check at the end of the emitter. Make sure that the RO water coming from the source all the way down to the emitter is still clean. Or do we need to clean your lines? So often we find some really low-hanging fruit, very inexpensive recommendations, or even just a little bit of elbow grease that might be used. Or like I said, you might be putting in the elbow grease, but not using the right grease and you're not actually cleaning. So
the wrong elbow.
Yeah, right. The right elbow, the wrong grease. And so really, putting in some outside recommendations, I really try and work with cultivators to make sure that I'm not impeding on their current operating procedures, or like I said, if they want to use beneficials or living soil, we work around these things, make sure that we just can get the microbial contamination of the overall cultivation to as low as possible with their current, staff, their current technologies, their current budget, and then really support them throughout the year lease to make, these small incremental changes. And we just watch the run times get lower and lower and lower as a result.
You mentioned GMP, which I feel like is good manufacturing practices or something like that. Is that like a actual certification, or is that just something like a generic term, or is that something that you can get like take a class for, and like Department of Health certification, something like that?
Yeah, so it's kind of in the middle. It's a very interesting space where you meet GMP standards. So there are different like accredited bodies that can come accredit you as GMP. But we at Willow, we're not an accredited body, but we get you GMP ready and include our system in that preparedness. We have a couple clients that are coming online because this definitely is the way the industry is moving towards. And as we get towards federal regulation, we just see this kind of being the direction. And so people are trying to jump the gun and be ready before they're required to, because it is a pretty lengthy process. It's a lot of paperwork, sadly, but all that paperwork is supporting the actions of what's going on in that cultivation. So it really is a lot of documentation of the current practices that are good for manufacturing.
And there's another one that I feel like I saw, like HACCP or something. Yeah. Can you tell us about that a little bit? Because I just heard about that yesterday and I don't know a goddamn thing about it.
No, that's great. I mean, these are things that are really part of like general hygiene and a lot of food safety.
Can you tell us what HACCP stands for? Sorry to cut you off. Do you know?
Hazard Analysis and Critical Point.
Okay, so sorry to cut you off.
No, you're great.
Thank you.
And again, like this is, what we can, really support the industry in is conversations around HACCP plans. It's a kind of plan that you carry out that when there is like, where are your critical points, right? I consider one is like the soil coming in, right? I want the soil that's coming in to be analyzed, because if that pallet of soil or cocoa was left outside, got rained on when it was in Bolivia, before it even got to me, and then I got it and it looked great, and it was dry, it seemed like it always was. Like I said, microorganisms are something that is micro. You can't see it with the unaided eye. And once you can see it with my 20/20 vision here, that means it is macro, right? Now we are talking macroorganisms, really. So HACCP plans really determine where those critical control points are. Testing your inputs, testing that cocoa before it comes in, before you integrate it into 50 new plants, make sure that the microbial load of that product is good. Another one would be something like the trimmer, right? Something that every plant is going to go through. If you're using a mechanical trimmer, that would have its own score of how it could be a hazard if it was contaminated, what that would mean for your products down the line. So yeah, these are things that, again, I just went to the Food Safety Consortium, which was connected incredibly with the Cannabis Quality Conference up in New Jersey. And it really was an amazing synergy of where the food industry is, and where the cannabis industry is coming up behind it. But I will say, I feel like the food industry has really perfected some of these systems. And, we could slap a green sticker that says 420 on it and charge twice the amount from the food industry. But I feel like the cannabis industry is now becoming very synergistic with the food industry and understanding that the things that are used in the food industry for decontamination or environmental controls or understanding your process are going to be used in the cannabis industry just the way. We don't really need to reinvent the wheel.
Can I ask you something though? Because this is a point that a bunch of people have made to me that I never really considered before. But one of my favorite quotes that my guy said to me was, "Nobody's smoking their tomatoes."
Yeah.
So, and I know they use these irradiation techniques on dried spices and things of that nature,
and ozonated water for sure too. Yeah.
Yeah, but nobody is smoking tomatoes. And I thought that was an interesting point. I was curious if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think there's definitely like a balance that needs to be made and a general understanding that cannabis is a inhalated product or often ingested edibles. So, just like the food industry, edibles have to be made sure that they're free of salmonella, free of E. coli. I know lots of people have heard about these different types of outbreaks in lettuce, meat, things like that. And also, I think this is why aspergillus is such a sticky subject, is because aspergillus on a food product, tomato, would be fine. But on an inhalated product by an immunocompromised patient, because we are calling this a medicine, then we need to be careful. So there really has to be a greater understanding of how it's ingested. But again, on the cultivation side, I think some of these synergies are much more overlapping.
Yeah, and I forgot to ask you one question. I wanted to ask you how many employees you guys got over there and sort of what their roles are within the company.
You know, this is, I know I talked about agri-science earlier and us building this amazing cannabis lab. I feel like I get the same energy here. Willow Industries is an amazing company who really is here for the clients, really here for the cannabis community that is struggling. Jill invented this amazing technology out of the need for it. You know, contamination regulation was coming and there wasn't a lot online for
Who's
it.
Jill? Who's Jill?
Jill is our CEO, incredible woman. Gosh, she has just helped me overcome my fear of talking, right? I'm a scientist. I'm not much of a podcaster. But really the support that we get here at Willow from Jill and the team is really incredible. We really do stand by this product. We have an incredible engineering team and production team who I work with closely to do R&D to further innovate and continue to perfect the system. We have a couple of announcements for MJ BizCon that we've been keeping secret. I wish I could tell you about them, but coming soon.
Wow.
I've been sworn to secrecy, but man, I mean, honestly, the team is just incredible. And then we have our customer success team, which is kind of the middle ground of once you get your Willow lease, you also get a customer success manager who is going to be your partner for the next year and ensure that you understand, you know, how to use the machine and the technology and be there for you through the ups and downs because, you know, truth be told, you have a leak roof and, you know, there's a leaky situation and you call us and, hey, we just really had a big situation. We think the contaminants are probably going to be a little higher than usual. I'll send a swab. We can test it, see what's coming through that leaky roof and, you know, adjust your times if necessary. You know, someone wants to try a new beneficial. We're happy to test that beneficial before you put it on your plants, right? Test things before you use them. And if you still want to use it, even though it has this, that, and the other thing, again, maybe we increase your runtime by a half hour. If you determine that the beneficial really didn't help the plants, you know, grow any bigger or really push out more cannabinoids or really give you that terpene you were looking for, then we reduce the runtime again. You know, we really work throughout the process with your cultivation team. I'll say, you know, having a marketing team for the first time in my life, that's incredible. They set up things like this where we really get the Willow scientific passion out to the people. A lot of people just think we sell the machine and run. And that is another difference between us and some of the other companies is that we are a lease model. So we work with you through all the trials and tribulations, through changes in regulations. I mean, we've had changes happen so fast in this industry and, you know, we're all doing our best to keep up, whether it's the cultivations or the labs. And at Willow, I kind of get to be a great in-between to help both sides.
Do you guys have a testing lab there as well in there?
So I have, you know, to the right of me here, I call it maybe like our mini lab. Like I said, can do pretty much any state testing that's needed. We have a full, you know, we can buy 3M Petrifilm. I can buy chloramphenicol plates. You know, none of this is proprietary as many labs want to say, as they may think. Again, the food industry has been doing this for years and years for milk testing and, you know, tortillas, anything, everything gets tested.
Yes,
and so,
yes, Deep Hill. Come on.
So we can, got some friends over there too. We can do it all. I mean, again, it's not rocket science. It is basic college microbiology when it really comes down to it. And I, again, use the exact same techniques as your state lab would use, so we can compare those apples to apples. I think that's really what's most important, is to get a really good understanding of what's going on inside your cultivation versus just getting the numbers from your lab. Because the labs are busy. They're not always available to consult and help and make recommendations and come visit your facility. That's what we do here.
Yeah, we don't have a state lab.
Yeah, or that.
Let me slap this back up. I'm with Carly Bader from Willow Industries. And, you know, I've had a confluence of two ideas that you're talking about here with the machinery that you use and the consultations that you use. Are you ever worried that if your consultations are good enough that you will talk your customers out of needing your machinery?
100%. I will say, you know, I feel like with some of the sales team, I know I mentioned production and you know, the CS guys, marketing even, but yeah, the CS team, I might not be their biggest fan, but you know, even that being said, our consulting is not free. If you get a Willow lease, it is. We also do consulting without the Willow lease. So, you know, the revenue is pretty good. It keeps me able to buy the total yeast and mold tests that I need and buy the Petrifilms that, you know, my clients require. But with that being said, we also, because I'm not an accredited lab, I'm not ISO, I'm not, you know, doing all that paperwork I was mentioning. I get to keep my costs very low, and that really shows up in the cost to the client. But that's what we want. I mean, I don't care if it shoots me in the foot by helping out the cannabis community. I'm here for it. I'll take a shot. I really feel like I'm more passionate than that. I can work through the pain.
Okay, and can you tell us exactly how the machine works? Like, I've never seen one. What do you, is there like a tray where you open it up and put the weed in? Could you just give us like a little rundown on how that goes?
Yeah, so we're actually in, I think right now, the third iteration, the Willow 360. We had the Willow 20 and the 5, which were in fact tray models where you would put the product onto the tray and then the ozone one would flow over it. It was pretty big, and we still do sell those, lease them out to clients who want to use them for things like joints or products that they have already at like a final stage. But what we did learn, because we are ever so connected with our clients, is that they wanted something that could take more volume. They needed to do more volume and not stack it out on these trays. So we now have the Willow 360, which is a drum. It is around kind of the size of a keg, to be honest. And you put about 30 pounds of product into that drum, put the drum into the machine, and the machine is going to create ozone from ambient oxygen. So there is no need to buy gas cylinders. There's absolutely no inputs required, no consumables needed. And the ozone machine, like lightning, creates ozone out of oxygen in your ambient air and pumps that into the drum. The drum turns, I think it's 15 degrees, however often as you want. Some people like a folding a little bit more. Some people put less product in, so they want it to fold less often. But it just kind of rotates very slowly so that we can have the ozone flow over all the product very evenly. And again, your setting time is up to, you know, our conversations, whether it be 1 hour or 4 hours or up to even maybe 6 hours for those higher contamination levels and maybe tighter regulations like states that have aspergillus testing. And after that time, you pull the drum out, open it on up, put it into your cure bags or cure bins and cure the way you would. Over time, that ozone concentration that is on your product is going to degas. We put a lot of ozone on that product, and so there's a higher concentration within your product. But once you start to open those bags and degas, that concentration of ozone is going to go from a higher concentration to a lower concentration. And again, turn right back into ambient oxygen. So no consumables, very, very quick runtime. And as I mentioned, this is a way where you can kind of take your tote, dump your tote into our barrel, and then go back from that barrel to your tote for the final cure.
Word up.
I think we've got a couple of videos on the website where you see someone loading and unloading it. And I always kind of refer people to that because it gives you a really good scale of size. It's about
You want to plug your website real quick?
Yeah. I think it's willowindustries.com. And then up in the right-hand corner, you'll also see Willow Scientific. You can click into there. And yeah, just really seeing the loading and unloading is, I think, really helpful to people because it's, you know, something that's never been created before. It is one of a kind.
And I read an interesting story, and I'd like to, you know, I didn't have a ton of background on this, but from what I'm told, in other industries, right, the irradiation of spices, what they're doing is they're taking products that's already compliant and they're just dialing it down a little bit. Are there people in the weed industry, and I feel like, I mean, I know I've seen it out here on the East Coast at least, that are taking product that's failing testing and remediating it, which I'm told is not a thing in any other industry except cannabis.
Yeah, and that's why it's weird. That's why, you know, we as Willow think it should be part of your, you know, microbial control. It's something that you're always doing. This kind of reactive process that the cannabis industry does where you fail test and then you then treat that product. I think it shows that there's, you know, different tiers of product that maybe we should have. You know, you can have your pre-treated Willow ozone as your, you know, top premium, and your, you know, failed and had to be irradiated for 12 hours as, you know, maybe your mids.
Have you ever done a consult at a place where you guys walked in and you're like, we're not even going to touch this. This is just terrible?
No client is out of the, you know, out of the scope. I really try and support everyone. And again, with their needs and their budget in mind, really try and keep their budget in mind when it comes to making recommendations for what to do. Simple PPE, you know, sometimes that's some low hanging fruit. You know, worker flow, making sure workers aren't going from the trim room into a cultivation room. I mean, that's free. Worker flow, things that, you know, we can recommend that are really low hanging fruit and can be done with the current staff that are on hand. I definitely understand that, you know, when staffing is an issue, sometimes cleaning is the first thing to go. But I think there's ways in which in our consultations, we really streamline processes. And like I said, make sure that what you are doing is in fact having a positive effect on your contamination load.
Word up. Another good one. Yeah. I got a couple more questions for you here. Shameless Carly Bader from Willow Industries. Thanks for being here, Carly.
I'm loving it.
One thing that I was thinking about was like, if you have a super moldy nugget, right, and you put it into any type of remediation and or a kill step or whatever it's called, perhaps it will kill all the mold. Does the like the fuzzy like spider webby shit still stay in there? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, so I mean, that is also why many of these states have mycotoxin testing. Just like I mentioned earlier, cannabis can be remediated into concentrate. Does it kill all the microbes? Yes. Does it leave the toxins behind? Yes. This is also why my, you know, degree and my background in cholera toxin is really helpful, because we can kill cholera, we can, you know, remove the bacteria from the water environment, but it doesn't mean that the toxins that they produce aren't still there. This is the same thing for E. coli and salmonella. The toxins they produce are still there. So when we talk about remediation, we also have to be concerned with the amount of toxins that some of these species leave behind, especially Aspergillus. And that is why many states, I think some of the more scientifically driven states have added mycotoxin testing for remediated concentrates. And I think that's perfect. That really ensures that the product that's making it out to the client, to the consumer, to the medical patient, is both clean of microbes, but also the toxins that they, persist even in their absence. And this is stuff that, like I said, when I came to Colorado, I had Fed money, $1 million grants, that type of thing. And I think that's coming soon. Until then, we really have to be protective. I mean, I've always said that cannabis has never killed anyone. And that is where we really need to be tight on, because the minute it does, we're going to have every, mother and just mother really coming down on us. I hate to be so harsh, but we already have enough stigma. There's already enough people out there that really demonize this community. And if we were to have a death, that's the end of our clean record. So I know people say and are worried from an economic standpoint, but I think for the long-term economy and support of this cannabis community, we really have to make sure that we stay on the tighter end of things, as to make sure we're being safer than real sorry.
Is it possible? So like, say again, I wanted to use the example of taking a moldy nugget and blasting it through the machine. Is it possible that it would not kill all the mold and that the mold could start regrowing or something like that?
Yeah. So, just in the same way mycotoxins are tested, some of the best states have also added water activity testing. And water activity is very specific for microbial growth. If you have a product, food product the same, that is below a certain water activity, there's not enough water for those microbes to grow. They need that as well to proliferate. So often some of the best states have not only said, okay, you need 10,000 CFUs of microbials or lower, but you also need 0.65 or lower water activity, which means that I could pull a sample off the shelf in 3 months and it should still be that exact number, because none of those microbes were able to proliferate while in that storage condition.
How about pesticides? How do pesticides interact with ozone? If you were, I mean, I don't know. Is the product that is running through your machine, is it, you said maybe they're testing or they're remediating it before testing? I'm just curious because like, I assume whenever you would run a pesticide through something like that, maybe it would change up the chemistry a little. And that's something that's way over my head.
Yeah. So I would love to see that too. We've had clients who are like, oh, can ozone decontaminate my pesticides? And I feel like, like I said, we try to keep it really low, really light, super gentle, to, like you said, kind of scramble that chemistry enough to make it undetectable by your average lab would probably be quite the scrambling. So, I really don't, from our perspective, we don't utilize the Willow technology to decontaminate pesticides. But again, it's all really up to how the labs are testing and, are they able to find that chemical structure, or are we able to scramble it enough? And that's the same thing with microbes. Are they able to test for that viable microbe or test for that DNA, or have we killed it enough to make it non-detectable?
Are there labs using your equipment, or is it all just like growers and stuff like that?
So growers for sure. Yep. I would love to partner with a lab, but usually it's more for like R&D testing, in the way that I was talking about earlier, for like pre and post potency, to ensure that we're not changing potency numbers, or changing cannabinoid content. But no, this is definitely something that we lease out to cultivations so that when they send their lab to this, or their sample to the lab, or their lab comes and takes that sample, that it is a decontaminated product. Yeah, the labs, like I said, the labs are busy, but yeah, I mean, there are definitely, recommendations that the labs now give. And there are a few out there that are happy to recommend Willow because they see their client was failing beforehand. They got them in contact with us. Now they get to, I always say like a flashcard, just go through those plates, pass, 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 pass. Every plate that I see that has, no growth on it, that's an easy count. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. It's the ones that have, 145 blue dots that you got to sit there and count each one. So, a lot of the labs do know and recommend us because they get to see the data behind their clients pre and post Willow.
Is there any labs you'd care to shout out?
Oh gosh, SC, some of my favorites. Act Labs, yeah, like you said, Infinite Chemical.
You know those guys? Yeah, Josh is coming on Thursday. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because each of my clients have to be tailored to their state regulations as well as their lab tech. We kind of have this triad of myself, the cultivator, and the lab often on the phone. So we can, again, utilize the data. What are their counts coming out at now before, we onboard them with the Willow? Okay, we ran it for 2 hours. What are our numbers looking like now? Oh, we were able to reduce it by 95%. They're well below the threshold. Great. Maybe we can go to 1 hour. Let's try that out for a bit.
Is any of that data publicly available anywhere?
We have some white papers on our kill. We put it out as, third-party verified data. But again, every client has their own cultivation environment. So they're coming in at different numbers and going out at different numbers. But we do have, tons of data behind that. I presented it to the Marijuana Enforcement Division in Colorado. I present it often on what I've been calling my book tour this year. Like I said, I was just in New Jersey at a conference, more talking about Willow scientific and quality control points. But we do have 2 white papers on how well the cultivation experience is, both with kill as well as with quality. We also have data, as I mentioned, R&D data behind both hemp.
Is that on your website or something?
Yeah, and feel free, Carly at Willow Industries. I can definitely send you either or of them. I think on the website you might have to put in your name and stuff, and then they send it to you. But it is just incredible to see how we can get the same quality product through the machine, reduce the microbials, as well as keep the cannabinoid content the same and preserve those terpenes and keep the terpene content.
Yeah, and that was one of my last couple of questions here was because that's, and again, this is something I know nothing about, but a couple of people have asked me if it would degrade the terpenes or, as opposed to a traditional dry and cure, or maybe that's drying it out too. I'm just curious. If you guys have done any studies on that, like pre and post, and I'm curious about that.
Yeah, we've done both data studies, like I said, for pre-post when it comes to cannabinoid content and terpene content. And we do it to the extreme. Like I said, we maybe run 4-6 hours at the higher end, but we've run samples for 12, 24 hours to really, push the limits. How long would it take for us to affect, right? That's science for you. Seeing that nothing happened is great, but how far can I push it till I see something happens? And like I mentioned, using reactive oxygen, using free radicals is going to cause over time some effect. And this is why I mentioned our product and our process being much more on the quality and really conservatively gentle as a process, because we don't see any change in cannabinoids. We don't see any change in terpenes. I can say I bring the product that I buy or product given to me to the lab, and I ozonate my product because I really think it has a great smoke. When it comes to, the taste is still there. I really see no quality differences that I can tell, no sensory differences. So I think it's important that, like I said, with the data, we pushed it as far as we could to see where are those diminishing returns, and it is not really within our window of where we really use our product.
Cool. Yeah, because I know that like some of my homies that used to do like legacy market grows and sketchy houses, they would use ozone to vent their gases out and eliminate the smell. And I was like, okay, if they're using ozone to eliminate the smell, would that eliminate the smell of your bud maybe when you run it through the machine? And yeah.
So it definitely, for the time being, like I said, when you have that ozone concentration on the product while it's killing those microbes, ozone does have its own smell. It kind of smells inert, which again is not what you want for your bud. You want all those trichome, those terpenes that are being kind of pushed out. So once that ozone is dissipated, then you get your smell back. We don't remove any of that smell. If anything, that ozone is kind of covering it up for a little bit while we are treating that product, while that pressure of the ozone is on there. Once that pressure is released, that concentration is going to off gas and you're going to get that smell back. You could put it through a grinder and really kind of, feel that vibrance right away. It's something that, we at Willow have, again, we've taken those recommendations. I mean, like I said, back in my day, we were recommending extraction. Then a couple of years later, I heard about the rad source. We were recommending that. Then Willow came online, heard about that. That's even better. Even internally, Willow is ever innovative. And like I said, we've got some even better announcements for MJ BizCon this year that it really supports the quality of that product because of some of these concerns. We're really here to bust through them.
And I believe you said that ozone is dangerous to breathe for humans. Is there any chance that these machines could leak out and that could be an issue? I was curious about safety concerns, possibly.
And this is something we are also really concerned about. Just as you mentioned, you had, some legacy friends who stuck maybe an Amazon.com ozone generator in the room. And that's
exactly what they did.
Yeah, we've heard the stories as well. People are like, I don't need to pay for your product. I'm just going to do this. Well, it's very, very different. Again, we have, millions of dollars invested into the iteration of, the Willow 360 right now, and a team of engineers and production who have really, perfected the ozone ppm, the volume of ozone, the pressure of this system, how it is being, treated to the surfaces within the drum. This is something that has really been perfected over time. And truthfully, science class number 2, putting ozone or a low amount of pressure of oxidation on these microbes can actually make them hardier. Like I mentioned earlier, with the IPA, if you just kind of tease with decontamination, microbes will go, oh shit, I'm going to die. Something weird just happened. I just got pressured with this oxidative stress. I need to make babies. So small amounts of oxidative stress can induce these oxidative stress responses and actually cause Aspergillus specifically to make spores or become more hardy. So putting that small ozone generator in the corner of one of your rooms is not going to treat that product uniformly, and may very well start, exercising and beefing up your microbials, and causing further contamination. So this is why, it takes a village. It takes this community to all communicate, work together. As I said, forget IP. None of this is rocket science. It really is just cannabis science, and I'm here for it.
And every time you say IPA, I think you're talking about beer, because I'm over here. I'm over here in craft beer, Vermont. It's like,
nice.
Yeah, I don't.
Colorado as well.
I don't like beer, but whatever. I had one more on there. Where'd it go? Oh, where did it go? I had it.
Yeah, and I mean,
fuck.
IPA. We can talk about people you try to recycle the IPA that they're using for their extraction and use it for cleaning, which I love, right? That's a really great, inexpensive way to do it. But again, you have to make sure it's at the right concentration so that you're cleaning properly. So I work with a lot of really smart cultivators who are, taking the time to do X, Y, and Z, and still sometimes fall up short. And that's really where we can come in and support them.
Oh, yeah, there it is. My question was about labeling. I don't know if and I know I have a couple friends who just talk about this a lot on LinkedIn, saying they think remediated products should be labeled. Do you have any thoughts on that idea?
I feel like education is kind of first, right? To slap a label on something can be both helpful as well as detrimental if people are not educated in what it means, right? Even the way that we're using the word remediation today is very specific, like I said, in Colorado. So a remediated product would only be a concentrate. I think that if something is deemed safe, right, it made it through all regulation, all testing, I don't think it should have to be labeled as such because you're telling me this product is safe. So why are you telling me it's been remediated?
Well, or maybe the regulators don't really know what they're talking about.
Yeah, well, and that's the secondary part is, do we know what is safe, right? Is there even enough research about what is safe? But then again,
or do you trust your regulators enough that they know what is safe?
Or that the regulators are bringing in the right individuals to teach them about what is safe. So I think
they're not doing that here.
Throughout the entire industry, more than labeling, I just want education. I think there should be a lot more of our tax dollars that, instead of filling in potholes in a road or putting in an after school program, I think a lot of our tax dollars need to come back to this industry, need to come back to the cannabis community and support us in research, support us in education. And instead of just slapping a label on, because what is the right label? Is it a symbol? Is it a statement?
You got to have the stop sign. Don't.
Yeah. Well, and that incites that it's dangerous, right? And
exactly, which is wild because you just legalize it, and I'm pretty sure weed has still killed fewer people than water.
Exactly. So to make things seem dangerous, where again, like you said, in certain states, willow ozonation is considered remediation at any point of the process. So I wouldn't want to see all product going through willow being considered remediated, because that would be the same as saying that every gallon of milk has been decontaminated, remediated.
And that's a comparison I've heard a lot with pasteurization.
Exactly. So, I think we understand what pasteurization is, but does your average cannabis consumer understand what remediation is? And I think
they don't.
that's why we're here today.
A lot of people don't even know, including myself, until last year, that this stuff exists.
Exactly. Or like I said, when I first came into the cannabis community, going from a stem cell research lab into a cannabis testing lab, I didn't know, very, very truthfully, until I saw the job opening, that cannabis was tested for microbials. I'm so happy it is, right? As a microbiologist. But did I understand that there was regulations around that and there was a deemed safe limit in my state for microbials? I didn't. And it's ever changed since then. We now have, like I said, water activity testing. We have mycotoxin testing. We have aspergillus testing. And all of these tests have been added since. And thus, the technology on both the decontamination side as well as on the testing side has had to keep up.
And, I was going to get out of here, but I had one more follow-up off of that you just said was, I've seen some states trying to enact these sort of zero aspergillus testing limit, like super. Do you think that's reasonable? Because from what I'm also told, aspergillus is kind of everywhere around us.
Yeah.
Curious to hear your thoughts.
I personally don't think it's reasonable, but it's what we have when it comes to technology. There is no aspergillus test that I can do in this lab or that any of the other labs that are doing that have enumeration technologies. So we can't set a threshold. We can't say like 1,000 CFUs of aspergillus is safe because we don't have a test that can count the amount of aspergillus present. The reason we have a detect, non-detect, or a presence absence test that requires 0 or failure at
so it's
1.
like a binary test where there's no gray area.
Yes, and I would like to scream this from the mountaintops. If you have gotten to this part after an hour and 15 minutes in this podcast, it's not that we don't want to. I feel like I would love to set a regulatory limit in the same way that we do with biotolerant gram-negative, in the same way that we do for total yeast and mold. It's because we have plates that make little blue dots that we count, and that is our enumeration.
Where would you set the limit if you were in charge of setting the limit?
I've always said that I think medical and recreational should be separate, especially when it comes to immunocompromised patients. I think immunocompromised patients, maybe we do have a detect, non-detect there. And for recreational, let's call it 1,000 CFUs. If you can have 100 or 10,000 CFUs of total yeast and mold in a product in Colorado, you should be able to have, let's say, 1,000 of those molds be aspergillus. Again, I'd like to, especially for immunocompromised and medical patients, stay on the safe side and really keep it down as much as we can. But again, it's really the fact that there isn't a quantification method. We only have detection, non-detection methods at this point. And, speaking to any of the scientific, technology companies that are out there that make these tests, please, there really would be, I think, a greater conversation, a more realistic conversation, as you said, because aspergillus is ever present in these cultivation environments that truthfully, a low concentration comparable to what we're allowing for total yeast and mold would, I think, be respectful to the community at large.
Word up. Thanks for taking that.
It's a iffy topic that comes up, and I feel like people just get so upset at the detect, non-detect, and I'm like, that wasn't what we chose. That's just
the only option, huh?
It's the option based on the technology.
Yeah, only game in town.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Well, I got to tell you here. Hold up, I'm gonna slap this up one more time. Willow Industries, Carly Bader. Carly, I'm out of shit. I want to do that. And I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. If there's anything we missed that you feel is important or any shameless plugs or shout outs you want to give, now is the time. It's been a pleasure. And I hope we could do this again sometime, maybe in a year, and see how you guys are doing.
Yeah, for sure. Shout out to all the labs that are giving us the data that we deserve, really, promoting quality product, sticking to the science, and shout out to Willow for being there for all the cultivators that are in a tight place and really need that full support, that 360, effort. We're here for you.
Carly Bader, I'm your host, Caleb Teskey. Remember, the devil's in the details, and the details are in the fine print. Peace, Carly.
Thanks.